I hope that you are doing okay. So now today we are going to do an introduction to biology. So I'll be the one who will be taking you in the subject for biology. My name is John. All right, so now we need to understand what is biology. So biology is simply the study of life, okay? Whenever we deal with the word bio means life, logy means knowledge. So it is basically anything to do with your knowledge about life. Now, what are some of the branches to this biology? So the first branch that we have is known as botany. Now, botany is simply the study of plants. So each time that you hear of the word botany, just know that you are dealing with plants. And then another branch to biology is known as zoology. So this zoology is the study of animals. Apart from zoology, we also have ecology, which is simply the study of how organisms interact with each other and their non-living environment. And then we also have biochemistry as another characteristic, which is simply the study of the chemical reactions that occurs in living organisms. The last one that we have is known as entomology, which is the study of insects. So let's now move on to the characteristics of living organisms. So for us to know to say these are living organisms, there has to be some characteristics that we need to observe about those. So what are these characteristics? Each time that you're trying to remember the characteristics, you always need to use the mnemonic Mr. Graphic. So each and every letter has a meaning. So we have the letter M, which simply means movement, the letter R, which means reproduction, the letter G, which means growth, the letter R, which means respiration, the letter E, which is for excretion, the letter F for feeding, the letter I for irritability and sensitivity, and the letter C is for cells. So now, what do each and every one of these letters mean? So let's move on to the letter M, which we said stands for movement. So movement, you understand movement as the process by which organisms change the location and posture without external help. So now that movement of an entire organism from one place to another is simply called locomotion. Another one now is respiration. Now, respiration is the release of energy from food substances inside our living cells. And there are two types of respiration. These are aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. You understand aerobic respiration as the kind of respiration or the type of respiration which involves the release of energy from food substances inside our living cells in the presence of oxygen. The quite difference is the opposite for anaerobic respiration. So you're releasing energy from food substances inside living cells in the absence of oxygen. Now, we need to know, even as we are distinguishing the two, to say in aerobic respiration there is a more high energy yield as compared to anaerobic respiration. So the other characteristic that will help us to identify to say these are living organisms is growth. So now growth is simply the permanent increase in size, mass, number of cells, and the complexity of an organism. So that is known as growth. Moving on to another one, which is reproduction. Now, reproduction is the process by which living organisms produce their offsprings, which are also known as progenies. And there are two types of reproduction. So there is sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. So in sexual reproduction, offsprings are produced by the fusion of the male and female gametes. You understand to say in the male gamete we have the spermatozoa. In the female gamete we have the oocyte, also known as the egg. when these two fuse, their nucleuses, when they fuse, that is fertilization. And in that fertilization which is happening, we are going to have offsprings that are going to be produced, which are similar to the parents. So now, in asexual reproduction, this one does not involve the use of sexual gametes, and the offsprings that are produced are quite different. They are not similar to those of the parents, or they are not identical. All right. So moving on to another characteristic of living organisms, we have excretion, which is simply the removal of toxic metabolic wastes from the cells of the body. And these toxic and metabolic wastes include urea, excess salts, excess water, biopigments, as well as carbon dioxide. So all those are things that when they are in excess in the body, they are needed and they have to be removed. Okay, now we move on to another characteristic, which is known as nutrition or feeding. So this is simply a process by which living organisms obtain food from their surrounding. So now there are two types of nutrition, and these are autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. In autotrophic nutrition, it is simply a type of nutrition where an organism makes its own food, e.g., green plants. We know to say green plants are able to synthesize their own food substances in the process we call photosynthesis. Now, moving on to another one, which is heterotrophic nutrition. So this is the type of nutrition where an organism takes in food present in bodies of others. So we can have examples of these organisms which are heterotrophs in nature. We can say the best example we can give are human beings. As human beings, we are not able to make our own food substances, right? We don't carry out photosynthesis. So we need to obtain our food from either killing the animal or getting the plant and cooking it. Then we obtain our nutrients from those animals. So when we depend upon others for our nutrition, that is known as heterotrophic nutrition. So auto means self, trophic producing food, right? So we move on to another one, which is irritability or sensitivity. Now, this irritability or sensitivity, it is simply the ability of organisms to detect and respond to a stimuli, or if it's singular, it's known as stimulus. So now, what is a stimulus? It is any change in the environment that causes a response from you. An example we can give is when you are walking and you see a snake. So that act of you jumping from the snake. So the snake becomes the stimulus and it is causing you to react. Now that is known as irritability or sensitivity. Moving on to the last one, which is cells. We know to say cells are simply basic functional units of living organisms. And then we have those organisms which are made up of single cells. An example is bacteria. And such organisms which are made up of a single cell, these are known as unicellular organisms. While those organisms that are made up of many cells, example we have it's fungi and plants as well as animals. Those are known as multicellular organisms. So these are the characteristics for living organisms that each one of us need to understand. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions from today's topic. So have a good night and bye-bye.